She had been sitting on the same stretch of pavement outside Corlebu Teaching Hospital in Accra for 11 days when the black Mercedes pulled up and the window came down. The boy leaned out. He was 17, maybe 18, wearing a white linen shirt with the sleeves rolled to the elbows and a watch that caught the 2:14 p.m. sun like a signal mirror. He looked at her the way a person looks at something left on the street by mistake. Then he laughed, a short, sharp sound that carried across the parking lot, and said loud enough for the hospital security guard and the woman selling fan ice by the gate to hear, "Does she think people actually give money to someone like that?" His driver said nothing. The woman on the pavement did not look up. She sat with her left leg extended in front of her. The foot bound in cloth strips the color of old paper, and she kept her hands folded in her lap over a small tin bowl that held 7 coins and a folded 20 CD note. She was not performing sorrow. She was not performing anything. She was simply there, on the concrete, in the heat, waiting for whatever was coming next. The Mercedes moved on. What the boy in the white linen shirt did not know, what no one in that parking lot knew, was that the woman with the bound foot and the 7 coins had a name that 3 governments and 1 international medical board had already written down in formal correspondence. He did not know that. He was too young and too comfortable to know that, but in 3 years, he would kneel on a floor he had never expected to kneel on, and he would say her name, and she would remember the day he laughed. Her name was Constance Owusu-Boateng. She was 53 years old and weighed 49 kilograms, which was 11 kilograms less than she had weighed 2 years ago, before the accident that took part of the feeling from her left foot and all of the savings from her account. She wore a blue and green kente print dress that had been washed so many times the blue had gone pale at the shoulders, and over it a gray sweater with a small hole above the left pocket that she had mended with thread that almost matched. She carried a canvas bag, dark green, that her mother had brought from a market in Kumasi in 1991. The bag had a broken left strap that Constance had repaired with a safety pin the size of her thumb. She repaired it every morning before she left the room she shared with a retired midwife named Afia on Judah Street in Osu. She repaired it carefully, pressing the pin flat against the canvas to make it lie clean. Constance had spent 26 years as a biochemist. She had worked for 11 of those years at a research unit attached to the University of Ghana Medical School, and for 9 years after that as a consultant to a regional health body that no longer existed because its funding had been cut in a budget review she had predicted in a report that nobody had read. The accident had happened on a Tuesday in November, the rear tire of a trotro giving out on the Tema motorway, the vehicle rolling twice. She had been sitting in the second row. The man beside her had a broken arm. She had nerve damage from the mid-calf down, and a medical bill for 14,200 cedis that had taken everything in her account, and then some. She had no family in Accra. Her daughter was in Toronto. Her daughter sent what she could, which was not enough. And Constance would not ask for more. She had applied for 3 consultancy positions in the 8 months since the accident. 1 had not responded. 1 had responded with a form letter. 1 had called her in for an interview at an office in East Legon, where a young woman behind a reception desk had looked at the crutch and then at the dress and had told her the position had been filled before Constance had fully sat down. The pavement outside Corlebu Teaching Hospital was not despair. Constance was precise about that in her own mind. It was a location. It was where the foot allowed her to be while the next thing arranged itself. She had a notebook in the canvas bag. She wrote in it every afternoon between 3 and 5 p.m. Observations, mostly. The number of visitors who turned left out of the hospital gate versus right. The correlation between the time of day and the composition of foot traffic. the way grief moved through a parking lot differently from relief. She had been keeping records her entire adult life. She did not know how to stop. The boy's name was Kolade Mensa Bright, and his father was Chief Mensa Bright, who had built the Mensa Bright pharmaceutical distribution network from a single delivery van in 1988 to a company that now moved medicines and medical equipment into 11 West African countries. Kolade was the second of 3 children, and the one his father had publicly announced. At a dinner for 200 guests at a hotel in Cantonments District the previous April, would take over the company within 5 years. Kolade had been at the hospital that afternoon because his father's personal physician had offices there, and Kolade had been sent to collect documents. He had not been sick. He had not been suffering. He had been bored. He did not think about the woman on the pavement again. Chief Mensa Bright was 61 years old and had the kind of stillness that came from having made enough decisions under enough pressure that the small ones stopped costing him anything. He did not raise his voice. He did not make gestures when he spoke. He wore the same style of suit, charcoal gray, 2 buttons, Ghanaian fabric lining in 3 rotations, and he had worn that style for 19 years because it worked, and he had no patience for things that didn't work. His hands were large and slightly calloused along the right palm from 20 years of handshakes, and before that, from the kind of work that had made the handshakes possible. He had one problem that his money could not fix, and it was getting worse. The Mensa Bright pharmaceutical network had expanded too quickly into 2 markets. A southern corridor deal that had gone wrong at the regulatory level, and a northern distribution partnership that was hemorrhaging the company 380,000 cedis a month due to a cold chain breakdown that nobody on his current technical team could correctly diagnose. His logistics director had given him 4 explanations in 6 months. All 4 had been wrong. The breakdown was somewhere in the intersection of temperature regulation, transit time, and compound degradation, and it required someone who understood the biochemistry of medical compound storage at the level of actual chemistry, not the level of a logistics spreadsheet. He had interviewed 7 consultants. The first 3 had not understood the cold chain problem. The 4th had understood it, but proposed a solution that would cost more to implement than the monthly loss. The 5th had simply not shown up. The 6th and 7th had both recommended systems that would require a complete overhaul of his northern facility in a time frame that the board would not approve. He was not a man who panicked, but he was a man who recognized when a problem was costing him more than time. It was Afia, the retired midwife who rented the other side of the room on Judah Street, who changed the direction of everything. Afia had a nephew who worked in administration at the regional health body that no longer existed. That nephew knew that the report written about the funding cut, the one nobody had read, had predicted not just the funding crisis but 3 specific operational failures that had all subsequently occurred. The nephew had kept a copy of the report the way some people keep proof. When Afia told him about the woman who wrote in a notebook every afternoon and repaired her bag strap every morning, and had not once, in 4 months of sharing a room, complained about anything, the nephew had brought out the report and read 3 paragraphs aloud at Afia's kitchen table on a Thursday night. Afia had not said anything for a while. Then she had said, "I need you to do something for me." The nephew's name was Tobena. He worked now in the procurement office at Korle-Bu. He knew, through the quiet infrastructure of people who work in health administration, that the Mensa Bright Company had been looking for a consultant. He knew specifically that they had been looking for 3 months, and that Chief Mensa Bright had reportedly said at a senior meeting that the next person he interviewed needed to have practical cold chain biochemistry experience, or he was not going to take the meeting. Tobena wrote a letter, not an email, a letter, on paper, typed. and signed with a single enclosure, 2 pages from Constance's 9-year-old report, the section that dealt with temperature-sensitive compound degradation in high-humidity transit conditions. The letter arrived at the Mensa Bright offices on a Wednesday. If this story is hitting you the way I think it is, stay with it. What happens in the next few minutes changes everything Constance Owusu-Boateng had stopped believing was possible. Chief Mensa Bright read the letter the same afternoon it arrived. He read the 2 enclosure pages twice. The second time, he read them more slowly, with a pen in his hand, and he made 3 marks in the margins, not corrections, but recognitions. This was someone who understood the problem not from the outside, but from the structure of the compounds themselves. He set the letter down on his desk and sat with it for 6 minutes without picking up his phone. Then he said to his assistant, "Find out who she is and where she is." It took Tobena 2 days to arrange. He told Constance on the morning of the 3rd day, when she was repinning the strap of the canvas bag. He told her quietly, standing in the doorway of the room, that a car was coming at 10:00 a.m. and that she should bring the notebook. Constance looked at him for a moment. Then she pressed the pin flat against the canvas. "Which notebook?" she said. "All of them," Tobena said. She wore the kente print dress. She wore the gray sweater with the mended pocket. Her foot was bound clean. She carried the canvas bag over her right shoulder, the broken strap held with its safety pin, and inside the bag were 3 notebooks. The one from the pavement outside the hospital, the one from the last year of her consultancy, and the one she had started the night after the accident and had not yet finished. She had not bought anything new. She had not tried to look like someone she was not. The driver held the car door and said nothing, and she got in. The Mensa Bright offices were on the 5th floor of a building in the Cantonments district, with a view of the road that ran toward the airport. The waiting room had upholstered chairs and a receptionist who smiled without checking what Constance was wearing. Constance noticed this. She noted it with the same precision she noted everything. Chief Mensa Bright came out of his office himself. He was larger than she had imagined from the description Tobena had given her. Wide in the shoulders, with the unhurried walk of someone who had been the most powerful person in every room for long enough that they had stopped needing to show it. He extended his hand. She took it. His grip was firm and complete, and he did not adjust it when he registered the crutch under her left arm. "I read what you wrote 9 years ago," he said, "about the compound degradation in humid transit conditions." He paused. "You were right about all 3 failure modes." Constance said, "I know." He almost smiled. He gestured toward his office, and she followed him in, and they sat across a wide desk that had 3 stacks of documents on it and a cup of tea going cold on the left corner. He slid a folder toward her. Inside the folder were the logistics reports from the Northern Corridor, 6 months of data, temperature readings, transit logs, compound degradation reports from the receiving facilities. She read the first page. She turned to the third. She turned back to the second. She opened the first notebook from the canvas bag and wrote a number in it. She read 2 more pages and wrote another number. She looked up. "Your cold chain isn't breaking down in transit," she said. "It's breaking down at the point of handoff. The refrigeration units at the Northern Relay Station are being shut down between consignments to save fuel. The shutdown period is between 4 and 7 hours. That's enough for the ambient temperature to affect the compounds in the second stage packaging. By the time they reach the end facility, the degradation looks like a transit problem." It isn't. Chief Mensa Bright had not moved. "How long would you need to confirm that?" he said. "I already have," she said. Page 7 of the June report shows a degradation pattern that's consistent with ambient exposure, not transit shock. Page 11 shows the same pattern in August. The transit logs show the handoff station as the common variable. She turned the folder toward him and placed her finger on the number she had written in the notebook. That's the temperature differential. That's what you're looking for. He picked up his phone. He made a call. He spoke for 90 seconds, and then he put the phone down and looked at her. My logistics director has been looking at this for 6 months, he said. Your logistics director is looking at it like a logistics problem, Constance said. It's a chemistry problem. He was quiet for a moment. Outside the window, a plane crossed the sky on its way to the airport. The cup of tea on the left corner of the desk was completely cold now. I'd like you to consult on the Northern Corridor, he said. Starting this month. There are 2 other distribution problems in the southern route that I want a second assessment on. He named a figure. It was a monthly retainer. It was more than Constance had earned in any month of her 9-year consultancy career. She did not let this show on her face. She wrote it in the notebook with the same pressure she used to write everything else. I'll need access to the relay station data going back 18 months, she said, and I'll need to visit the northern facility in person. When? Whenever the next consignment goes out, she said. That's in 11 days, he said. Fine, she said. It was on the way out of the building, in the elevator, alone, descending toward the lobby, that Constance allowed herself to press both hands flat against the elevator wall for 3 seconds. Just 3 seconds. Then she took them back and straightened the strap of the canvas bag, and the elevator doors opened. Tobena was waiting in the lobby. He looked at her face. Well, he said. I need to visit a relay station in 11 days, she said. He closed his eyes briefly and opened them. Afia is going to say she knew, he said. She did know, Constance said. What happened over the following 3 years was not a single dramatic moment. It was a sequence of precise, unhurried decisions made by a woman who had spent 11 days on a pavement, not in defeat, but in transit. Constance identified the cold chain failure within 6 weeks. The fix cost the Mensa Bright Company 47,000 cedis to implement, 1/8 of what the 6th consultant had proposed, and a fraction of what the monthly loss had been. The Southern Corridor problem took 4 months and 3 visits to a facility outside Kumasi. The second problem she identified there had not been in the original brief. She flagged it anyway, in writing, with supporting data, and it saved the company a regulatory violation that would have cost them their license to operate in 2 markets. She moved out of the room on Judah Street at the end of the 2nd month. She found a flat in Osu, 2 rooms, with a window that faced east. She kept the canvas bag. She replaced the safety pin with a proper repair from a seamstress on the next street. But she kept the bag itself because it had been her mother's, and because it had held the notebooks through the worst of it, and it had not torn. Her daughter came from Toronto at the end of the 1st year. They sat in the flat with the east-facing window, and Constance made jollof rice, and her daughter cried a little, and Constance did not tell her to stop. But she also did not cry herself. She passed her daughter a glass of water and let it be. The foot improved, not completely, but enough. The nerve damage had been assessed again by a specialist at Korle-Bu, a different one this time, and the prognosis was better than the first assessment. She walked with a crutch on difficult days, and without it on most days, and she wore a brace that a clinic in East Legon had fitted specifically to her measurements. She had paid for the fitting herself, from the first month's retainer, and she had paid in full on the day of the appointment. Kolade Mensa Bright she did not see for almost 2 years, He had been in the United Kingdom for 16 months on what his father had called an exposure program, and what the company called strategic positioning. When he came back changed in the way that some young men are changed by distance, not transformed, but slightly loosened from their own certainty. He was 19 now, then 20. Then the summer he turned 21, his father had a health event, not fatal, but serious enough that the board convened a meeting and Collade attended and discovered, sitting in that room with men and women who had known the company since before he was born, that he understood almost nothing about how the thing his father had built actually worked. Chief Mensa Bright recovered over 6 weeks at home. During those 6 weeks, Collade began reading through the company's consultancy reports. He read the logistics reports. He read the cold chain resolution summary. He read, on page 1 of that summary, the name of the consultant who had solved in 6 weeks what his father's team had failed to solve in 6 months. He read the name a second time. He went to his father's study and knocked and came in and said, "Who is Constance Owusu Boateng?" His father was sitting in the chair by the window with a medical textbook on his knee that he had not been reading. He looked at his son for a moment. "She is the consultant who is currently redesigning our quality control documentation for the Eastern markets," he said. "Why?" Collade said he wanted to meet her. His father did not explain the reason behind the look he gave his son at that moment. He simply said, "I'll arrange it." The meeting was in a small conference room on the 4th floor of the cantonment's building. Constance arrived first. She sat at the table with the canvas bag beside her chair and the notebook open, and she was writing something when Collade came in. He saw the bag first, then the notebook, then the brace on the left ankle, then her face, which was the face of a woman who had been through the kind of thing that leaves not marks but weight, the kind of stillness that doesn't come from nothing. He sat across from her. He said, "My father says you should be the one to brief me on the Northern Corridor situation." Constance looked at him. She looked at him with the precise attention she gave to everything: the logistics reports, the temperature readings, the notation in her notebooks. She looked at him the way she had looked at the pavement outside Corlebu on the day his white linen shirt had caught the 2:14 p.m. sun, she said. "I'll start from the beginning." He did not remember her. She did not tell him. For 3 hours she walked him through the cold chain analysis, the relay station failure, the fix, the monitoring protocol she had installed, the early warning system she had designed to prevent the same failure mode in the southern facilities. She showed him the notebooks, specific pages, specific numbers, the notation system she had used for 26 years. He asked good questions, not as good as they could have been, but earnest. He wrote things down. He did not look at his phone. At the end of the 3 hours he thanked her, and she nodded, and she picked up the canvas bag, and she left. He went directly to his father's study. "She's exceptional," he said. His father said nothing. "The way she thinks about the problem," Collade said. "It's completely different from anyone we've had before. It's like she's inside the compounds themselves." Chief Mensa Bright set down the cup he had been holding. "She's been consulting with us for 2 years, he said, with a quietness that carried something Collade had not been listening for. Collade said, "Where was she before?" His father told him. "The University Research Unit, the regional health body, the accident, the pavement outside Corlebu." Collade was quiet. "Outside Corlebu," he said. His father looked at him. He had not connected it. He made no expression that would indicate he was connecting it now. But something shifted in the stillness of the room, the way air shifts before rain. Collade said, "I need to speak to her again." It was a Thursday afternoon. Constance was in the east-facing flat in Osu, writing in the third notebook. The phone rang, and it was the assistant from the cantonment's office. And the assistant said Mr. Kolade Mensa Bright was requesting a follow-up meeting. Not at the office, at a location of her choosing. Constance wrote this down in the margin of the notebook page she had been on. Then she said yes, and gave the address of a small place near Osu Oxford Street, where she sometimes worked in the afternoons. Kolade was there before her. He was standing outside when she arrived, not in the white linen shirt, a plain dark blue one, sleeves down, watch absent. He held the door for her without ceremony, and she went in. They sat with tea she had not ordered but that arrived anyway, and he said, "I want to apologize to you." She said, "For what?" He said, "For the day outside the hospital, 3 years ago." He looked at her. "I don't know if you remember." She waited. "I said something," he said. "When I was in the car, I said something about you. To the driver. I said it loud enough." He stopped. "I was 17. That is not an excuse. It is a fact. I was 17, and I was thoughtless, and I said something unkind about a woman sitting on the pavement who had done nothing to deserve it." He stopped again. "I have been trying to understand, since my father told me, whether I would have said it if I had known who you were." Constance looked at him. "And?" she said. "I don't know," he said. "I would like to say no. I would like to say I was the kind of person who would have seen past the dress and the foot and the coins in the bowl and recognized a biochemist with 26 years of experience. But I don't know if that's true. I'm not sure I was that person at 17. You might not be that person now," Constance said. He considered this. "That's possible," he said. There was quiet between them. On the street outside, a radio from a passing car delivered a brief chorus of something she didn't recognize. "I am not interested in the apology," she said. "I want to be honest with you about that. The day outside the hospital did not break me. It added itself to a list of days. The list is long. What I am interested in is whether you are going to run this company one day, and whether, when you do, the people who carry the things you can't see from a car window are going to be the ones solving your problems or sitting outside while someone laughs." He did not flinch. He sat with it. "I want to be the second kind of company," he said. "Then you have work to do," she said. "Not on me, on yourself." She picked up the canvas bag. She stood. She said, "I'll have the Eastern Market documentation ready by the end of next week." She moved toward the door, then stopped. She turned around. "The notebooks I showed you this morning," she said. "The notation system." "Yes," he said. "I developed that system on the pavement outside the hospital," she said. 11 days of nothing to do but watch and count. I built the early warning protocol from observations I made in that parking lot." She let that be what it was. "There is data everywhere," she said. "The problem is what you think is worth counting." She left. Kolade sat for a long time at the table, with the tea cooling in front of him. When he stood up slowly, the way a person stands when they have been made to feel the weight of something real. He did not kneel. That is not the kind of story this is. But there was a moment in that small place near Osu Oxford Street. The moment between Constance's last word and the sound of the door closing, when Kolade Mensa Bright understood something that no business education had taught him. That the world he had been handed was full of people his comfort had trained him not to see, and that every one of those people was keeping records. Constance Owusu Boateng walked home along Osu Oxford Street in the late afternoon light, the canvas bag over her right shoulder with its properly repaired strap. The brace on her left ankle doing what it was designed to do. The third notebook inside the bag, with 3 new pages of notation from the morning's meeting. She stopped at the seamstress's shop and dropped off a blouse that needed the hem taken up. She said hello to the woman at the fan ice cart near the corner. She walked the rest of the way to the east facing flat, and she sat at the window and opened the notebook, and she kept writing. She had not stopped writing in 11 days, or in 3 years, or in 26 years of building knowledge out of whatever material life provided. The accident had changed her location. It had not changed her method. The pavement had been a place to work. The notebook had been the work. And the work had been there, all along, waiting for the world to come around to it. Dexter Mensa Bright, as the boy would come to be known inside the company, years later, when he began signing documents, would eventually build something with his father's inheritance that was different from what he had inherited. Not because he became a different kind of person overnight, but because one afternoon in a small place near Osu, Oxford Street, a woman with a canvas bag told him the truth without performing it, without softening it, without asking for anything in return except the quality of his attention. She had been sitting on that pavement with 7 coins in a tin bowl and 3 notebooks in a bag that held because she repenned it every morning. The world does not always recognize what it is standing in the presence of. It passes in black Mercedes with the window down and makes its judgment in the time it takes to cross a parking lot. But some things cannot be judged from a window. Some things have to be sat across from, read carefully, listened to until you understand what you're actually hearing. The ones who know this, who have always known this, are often the ones the world has given the most time to figure it out. Not by choice, by circumstance, by 11 days on a pavement with nothing but a pen and everything to notice. You have passed people today who are holding something the world has not asked them for yet. Some of them are counting. Some of them are writing. Some of them have already solved the problem you haven't named yet. The question is not whether they have something to offer. The question is what it costs you to wait until you find out. Leave your answer in the comments. If you had been the one in that car window, if you had seen her on that pavement and laughed, and then, 3 years later, she was the person sitting across from you holding the answer to your company's biggest problem, what would you do with that? Not what would you say. What would you actually do? I really want to read it. Subscribe for more stories about quiet people carrying loud truths, the ones the world walks past until it can't afford to anymore. I'll see you in the next one.